Anyway, actually I got interesting video to watch with you. It seems like a gamer called Josh Prime Gaming is kind of on DSP crusade. First and foremost, who is DSP? He is known for being rather bad at every single game he plays, but he's top tier Mulder, so he's complaining continuously and constantly and never stops. But statement of Elden Ring has too much of input delay actually piqued my interest, and I think we can watch it since it is only 9 minutes. Alright, let's play it.
Like in a FromSoft game, when the enemy's about to attack you, you have to press B and then release B, and then the character will dodge. This immediately adds more input delay. So I don't know why every game trying to be like FromSoft has to completely emulate that delay.
So apparently Elden Ring and other From Software games have input delay now. I don't know what the hell DSP is talking about, but today we'll take a look at his latest claims that all From Software games have input delay. Now let me catch you up on what happened. He was playing a Souls-like, but it wasn't Elden Ring. It was actually another Crab's Treasure, which, believe it or not, is actually a pretty fun Souls-like. I just started playing it, and even though the art style is very cartoony, the combat is pretty fun with a little bit of extra platforming. So he was playing that game, and he was getting absolutely curb stomped by the first optional boss, which is pretty much this game's version of the Tree Sentinel. And of course, instead of just accepting blame that he was just learning the mechanics, he had to bitch and complain. And his new thing is that all From Software games have input delay. So take a look at what he said, and then we'll dissect it, and we'll figure out if that's true or not.
Alright, before we are actually gonna get into it, it's worth to say that, like, input delay in the meaning of unclicking the button for the sake of to dodge is actually a real thing. You are losing 2, maybe even 3 frames in the process when people are actually counting these. So you would understand how much it actually is and how important 2 or 3 frames may be. Colossal Sword, Gags, was overpowered in patch 1.06 and downwards with 14 frames startup on the crouch poke. After the nerf, it went from 14 to 16 frames on 30 FPS, and it's simply that weapon became dogshit. Like nowadays, they balanced it around because of adjustments to different attacks, but entire weapon class was killed because of difference of 2 frames.
Another thing that I wish they didn't do, much like in Dark Souls, in order to do anything in this game, you have to release the button for it to take effect. What does that mean? Well, for example, if you're playing a different video game, and you have your controller in hand and you want to dodge, oh, here comes the enemy, press B. And the moment you press B, your character moves out of the way. In another Crab's Treasure, much like in a FromSoft game, when the enemy's about to attack you, you have to press B and then release B. And then the character will dodge. This immediately adds more input delay to your move. So because of that, you actually have to be more predicting of what the enemy's going to do rather than reacting. And that's annoying. I would much rather react.
I mean, that's a very good point, though. In PvP, you have that meme of player's quadrant. Let me actually find it. Essentially, DSP kind of, says it in his own words, but what he's saying is very true. You could potentially put PvP players into this quadrant. Yeah, people can be reactive, passive, aggressive, or read heavy. For example, on PlayStation you have additional input lag caused by the forced console settings and lack of ability to basically overclock your refresh rate. From my perspective, when I observe and play against very good players on PC versus PlayStation, it's very apparent that playstyle is a little bit different. PC players are very often more reactive, whereas console players are more read heavy, which means that console players rather more often predict the movement, whereas PC players just react to the things on the fly. But yeah, back to the topic. So far, DSP is not really that wrong about what he is saying.
Have good hand-eye coordination and react to an attack to dodge it, then know what the animation looks like so I can recognize the timing so I can do the dodge early in order to get out of the way. For example, that first optional boss that I fought was so annoying to beat because I couldn't just dodge things on reaction. So I had to play him for about 15 minutes to have seen all of his attacks, know how all of them hit, know the variations of each attack, because sometimes it'll look like he's going to slam once, but then he slams 3 times instead. Like, you just have to sit there and learn everything before you have a chance.
Just as a clarification for those who haven't played the game, the boss in question has 6 attacks, and they're very telegraphed. So even if there were input delay, they don't come out very quick, and you can see it coming every single time.
Okay, but I kind of don't understand the upset here. I'm not sure if Josh Prime and that his channel like is just very focused on debunking anything that DSP is saying or whatever. Everyone knows that DSP is kind of a meme, but I kind of don't understand the idea of, yeah, like from the perspective of it might be excuse in his case, because of course that input lag doesn't mean that much, especially when you are playing against PvE that is rather telegraphed. It's still like input lag is a really thing, so I'm kind of confused here.
And it's only 6 attacks to remember, so it wouldn't take like 30 minutes to learn the pattern. I just want to fact check him. Let's keep listening.
Okay.
In other games where things are just on reaction, you can get your move to come out. You don't need to memorize. Instead, you could just play well and beat things for shot. There are other games that are considered Souls-like games, like the Nioh series, that just give you your move the second you press the button. And there's nothing wrong with the Nioh series. It's good. So I don't know why every game trying to be like FromSoft has to completely emulate that delay input style. I actually think that's very annoying.
Alright, so this was literally the first time that I ever heard someone complain about input delays when you're talking about a FromSoft game.
What the fuck? You're not listening to many people then, because there was actually legitimately so many comparisons, especially at the release of Elden Ring, where people were comparing one-to-one the input lag between Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3. It was actually a very big topic in rather niche community, so maybe that's why it escaped the gamers' attention, but Elden Ring artificially, just from the get-go, has more input lag than previous entries of the Souls games. It's only getting, like, aggravated, I'm not sure if that would be correct word, by the fact that you have the dodge on the unclick if you are not using dodging caches.
Because FromSoft games are notorious for having amazing controls, and you're always in control of your character.
This is true, but that's not the point. Like, okay, let's continue. Maybe he's going to explain further. Maybe I don't get something.
So I was thinking to myself, am I smoking crack? Is he smoking crack? Someone has to be smoking crack, because this doesn't make any sense.
Maybe the guy just doesn't play PvP. Maybe it's not that common when you are play PvE. Like, you are, for example, not block cancelling. But Elden Ring, especially Elden Ring, has a humongous issues related to controlling your character related to, for example, input drops.
So I booted up Elden Ring and I tried it for myself.
Okay.
Maybe I was missing something.
Okay.
So I started dodging and I realized something real quick. There's no input delay. You hit the circle and right away your character dodges.
Bruh. Okay, listen, maybe he's using the macros and he's not aware. So here is that tool called Melina's Fingers. And this tool allows you to, for example, on the mouse and keyboard, separate sprint button and the dodge button. It actually makes so that macro allows you to have dodge on click. It's not real dodge on click. You are still going to lose some frames in the process when you are trying to dodge, as if, for example, in comparison to games like Lords of the Fallen that have legitimately dodge on the click rather than release, or like, for example, Dark Souls 1 where you have dodge on the click when you are locked on. But yeah, it's maybe he's using this type of tool and he doesn't even know. Even so, we are talking here about milliseconds. You are not going to see these things with your own eye, but they are going to effectively affect the gameplay.
Now, he was saying it only activates once you release the circle. Well, that's because if you hold the circle, that's how you run. And if you're standing still,
I am getting so confused by this video.
You're just going to backstep. Then he was making the comparison that with the Nioh games, when you press circle, you dodge right away. But that's because in the Nioh games, run is dedicated to the X button, because in Elden
Yeah, and that's what causing additional input lag. The guy, it makes... Oh, Jesus, okay.
Ring, the X button is for jump. Neo doesn't have jumps, so that's how you did it. So it's really brain dead, this argument that there's input lag, because I've tried it and I don't see any input lag whatsoever. I've never heard anybody complain about it. People are always complaining about input reading, and that might be a valid criticism, but input lag is just laughable.
Input reading is when the mobs are, for example, reacting immediately to using the Estus flask, just in case. Completely unrelated.
Even if there was a difference between the time you hit it and the time you release it, when you're not planning on holding it and you're just pressing it, that would be nanoseconds. That wouldn't even be noticeable. What it seems, it looks like...
Yeah, that's a problem. It's essentially a problem that this guy is coming from the ignorant point of view. Nanoseconds, yeah, wouldn't be an issue. Milliseconds is enough to actually be an issue.
This idiot is once again just making excuses for being dog shit at a game. I mean, why not just own up to your mistake? Say, you know what? It took me longer to learn it than I thought, but now I got a hang of it and I was able to beat the boss after 45 tries. No, he has to make excuses and pretend that From Software games have input lag, which is completely ridiculous.
So this is a good example of when someone is just getting upset at the person and just based on that negates anything they say. Yeah, just kind of not a good case here, because honestly, Josh is just fucking ignorant here. And DSP is right about the case of, well, input lag being an issue in these games for various different reasons. And especially in the Elden Ring, there is a lot of problems related to inputs. That being said, of course, DSP is saying these things in vast majority of cases because he's salty, as being salty is literally his entire personality, but bruh. Even though, if that's only the excuse for the sake of to say that, oh yeah, I lost to that boss because of this particular thing, it still doesn't matter at the end of the day because DSP is right. Like what he said, there was nothing so far, nothing wrong with what he said.
So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. Let me know if you guys have ever noticed any input lag in From Software games, because I definitely haven't.
Yeah, it's Josh Prime Gaming is without a doubt, well, wrong here. I wonder what people say in the comments. He spams dodge in the middle of his attacks, then screams, I rolled. He's been talking about this input delay since at least Dark Souls 3. He's been using this excuse for years now, yeah. By input delay, he probably means how once you attack, you must commit to it, which makes the Souls games feel great. Is Josh audience clueless? I mean, those might be just PvEers, so they have like a absolutely clueless perspective on the game, because I think Josh Prime is mostly doing, yeah, he's doing like a news content. So I guess those might be just, yeah, clueless PvEers, honestly. What this comment is saying here, it's recovery frames. It just makes things clear, and for maybe people on YouTube that don't get it. Yeah, this is, for example, frame data of thrusting sword, to be exact, clean rod, and it's 200 R1 moveset. And these frames over here, the 13 frames, it's a startup. Those 4 frames over here, it's active attack window, which is where your hitbox appears. And then the rest of these that you see here are recoveries. And also the counter damage, of course. The input buffer can be an issue though. It is not reset when you take a hit. The input buffer is completely different things. You have to learn mechanics, holy cow, what can I do about that? Okay, but it has nothing to do with it. Like, I mean, like the topic of the video is completely different, or the point that DSP was making. Cannot believe that I actually side with DSP, literal as scrub that essentially like never learns from his mistakes. But I legitimately have to. The guy is fucking right, and these comments are wrong or like completely don't understand what's going on. Detractor of the community, he's getting old, his reaction times are getting worse, and he doesn't want to realize it. Sad. I have like certain problem with argument of, oh, when I'm getting older, my reaction times are worse and so on, because scientific papers on this topic kind of miss the point of the correlation versus causation. Like, if you're going to take 47 years old man and gonna put him in front of the PC and measure his reaction times, he probably going to have worse reaction times while playing Fortnite, because he has to go to sleep in 30 minutes because he has to freaking drive his kid to school the next day, whereas 18 years old is going to have another 12 hours long Fortnite session. It's just a matter of being essentially accustomed with the game, just practice a lot. Like, I for one, it's my reaction times nowadays are probably better than they were when I was 20 years old, and I am right now 32. This guy is the OG of skill issue. That's actually true. So DSP is upset because you have to get good at the game. Yeah, like most of the comments are like, oh, I don't like the guy. They don't even care if wrong or not. They care about just the fact that they do not like DSP, so they want to shit on him. But Josh, in this case, big faux pas, honestly. Just lack of the understanding of the topic, purely ignorance, and making like a bad statement. This video would be so much better if you would come to the conclusion of, yeah, okay, the Elden Ring and overall Souls games, indeed, they have like some input lag issues, mostly related to the poor design of certain aspects of the game, or like bad coding, like it is in case of Elden Ring. But what DSP is doing is basically excuse. And then this video would have completely different sound to it, and would be so much better. But overall, what we have here is a fucking dumb video in the process. It's just plain wrong. As simple as that.